We have really good news now coming in from the Hurricane Center. Although Dorian has strengthened to 150-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds and it has slowed down, it is moving to the west at 8 miles per hour. Extremely powerful, well-defined storm now with that well-defined eye. As it continues on this path, it will continue to move more westerly here, and then eventually, once it makes its way close to the northern Bahamas, start to turn north. This path is slightly farther to the east. So again, the National Hurricane Center is following along with a lot of the other model consensus to keep this storm off of Florida's east coast. Although right now it still does look like it could brush the Carolinas along its path, we again are in really good shape here in Florida if this path continues to shift east. All right, as we continue our streaming coverage, again, we have great news here from the National Hurricane Center's 11 a.m. update, which just came in. And again, this storm expected to stay off of Florida's east coast if nothing changes here throughout the day today, where the path needs to shift any farther to the west. We are looking really good as this storm continues to approach the Bahamas. So as we take a look at what this means, though, we are still going to have some coastal impacts on the east coast of Florida, and I do think we'll even have some heightened wind speeds here across Tampa Bay as a result of this storm. But again, the National Hurricane Center, because of the models that are coming in, you can see here with the spaghetti models, most of them are now in agreement keeping this storm offshore. We've got one that still shows it making landfall here in the state of Florida. But again, with the model consensus moving farther into the Atlantic, this is just great news for the state of Florida. We're still watching for the Carolinas here. If you do have interest in this area, I would certainly continue to keep updated, and even in Florida, I would continue to keep updated and posted. There is still a potential that this track could shift in the other direction. I think it's becoming less and less likely as time is moving on. But again, it is worth watching and worth keeping updated. And as I said, as this storm approaches, it does get pretty close to the Florida coastline. So that means that there will be some significant coastal issues here with coastal erosion and the potential still for some storm surge flooding along the east coast of Florida, as well as some gusty winds. We'll take a look at that a little closer in just a moment. But right now, this is the Euro, and it's showing it remaining offshore, still looking like a very well-defined intense storm by Thursday of this week as it's moving closer to the South Carolina coastline, possibly brushing the North Carolina coastline and then moving out into the Atlantic. If we continue to see these models pushing it farther out into the Atlantic, though, there is a strong chance it would miss the North Carolina coastline entirely. So again, we'll just continue monitoring that. But given this current path, what we would be expecting would be somewhere between 1 to maybe 4 inches of rain right along the coast here as the storm makes its way offshore of Florida, but again, still close enough to bring some heavier rainfall, but not nearly the amounts that we were looking at before. Here in our local area, we would be just seeing our typical summertime pattern. In fact, it might even be lower coverage of rain because that storm would just be pulling all that moisture in across the state. So we might end up with a couple of dry days as a result of this storm moving so far offshore. Again, at this point, though, we could still get some breezy conditions as the storm works its way through the Atlantic close enough to the east coast of Florida that we could still see some tropical storm force wind gusts. So that means wind gusts above 40 miles per hour. Nothing terribly out of the ordinary for us. We get those kinds of wind speeds when we get summer storms rolling through as well. But you can see with the potential wind gusts along even the east coast of Florida with the storm so much closer to it, we're still not even looking at hurricane force wind gusts as that storm moves through. So again, this is definitely some very good news that we're getting from the National Hurricane Center today. So I wanted to show you what else is going on in case you see something on social media or elsewhere. I just want you to know that Dorian is really the U.S.'s only concern when it comes to storms right now. As we look into the Gulf and the Caribbean, we do have a batch of storms that are forming near Cuba, but they are headed west. So that is good news there. And as far as this next batch of storms, which does have a decent chance of being numbered or named here in the next couple of days, it is going to move north in the Atlantic, so it is not going to be headed in our direction. So good news there. As far as our weather goes today and into the holiday weekend, we've got a typical summertime pattern here. We'll have a round of showers and storms that move from east to west across the state and continue making their way out into the Gulf after sunset, where they'll taper off. And then overnight tonight, it's unlikely we'll see any rain. If we did, it would be inland around eastern Polk or Highlands County. We might get a stray shower overnight. But the east to west flow generally keeps us nice and dry for the first half of the day. And that's what we're looking at for tomorrow morning. Starting off our Sunday morning on the dry side, good amount of sunshine and lots of heat and humidity. It is going to be awfully hot and steamy out there. We'll have another round of afternoon showers and storms, though, to help cool us down as we get into the latter portion of the day. But we're only looking at about 40% coverage. So again, this is not going to be a nasty weather weekend by any stretch. And then on Monday, getting into Labor Day, we may see a few extra showers and storms in the afternoon to evening, but we're still on that east to west flow with highs in the low 90s. It's going to be hot and steamy, and it's going to seem like typical summer weather.